I spent 18 months developing a revolutionary AI cybersecurity system that could predict and neutralize attacks before they happened. Nextech was supposed to be the perfect place to build it, well-funded, innovative, with all the resources I needed. What I didn't realize was that CEO Victor Carlton had a different plan. Wait until my project was nearly complete, then steal it. My name is Sophia Chen, and until yesterday, I was the lead AI architect at Nextech Solutions. I'd left a cushy job at Google to join this promising startup, bringing with me years of expertise and an idea I believed could change the cybersecurity landscape forever. The Precog security system, named after the precognitive beings in my favorite sci-fi movie, could identify attack patterns before they fully formed, creating defensive protocols that adapted in real time. For a year and a half, I worked 80-hour weeks, building the system from scratch. Victor would occasionally drop by my lab, asking seemingly innocent questions, reviewing progress reports. "Remarkable work, Sophia," he'd say, that million-dollar smile never quite reaching his eyes. "The board is thrilled with your progress." 3 days ago, I finally reached the milestone we've been waiting for. Precog successfully predicted and neutralized a sophisticated attack simulation without any human intervention. It worked even better than I'd anticipated, identifying vulnerabilities I hadn't programmed it to recognize. The AI was learning, evolving. I immediately scheduled a meeting with Victor to share the breakthrough. His assistant, Megan, squeezed me in for a 15-minute slot the following afternoon. When I arrived, I found not just Victor, but also the company's lead counsel, Diana Wells, waiting for me. "Sit down, Sophia." Victor gestured to the chair across from him. "Diana's just here as a formality." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. I sat, clutching my laptop with a demo ready to go. "Before we discuss your project," Victor began, sliding a document across the desk, "we need to address some concerns about your employment agreement." Diana spoke up, her voice professionally detached. Section 12.4 clearly states that all intellectual property developed using company resources belongs exclusively to Nextech Solutions. Of course, I nodded. I'm aware of standard IP clauses. But Precog was initiated before I joined Nextech. I have documentation proving. "We've reviewed your prior work," Diana interrupted. "While you had a basic concept, the actual functioning system was developed here, on our time, with our resources." Victor leaned forward, dropping the pretense. "Let's cut to the chase, Sophia. Precog belongs to Nextech. The board feels your compensation package is more than fair for what you've delivered." "My compensation package," I repeated, confusion giving way to dawning horror. Victor smiled thinly. "Your employment contract has a success bonus clause. You'll receive a one-time payment of $250,000 when Precog goes to market." Generous, considering industry standards. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. $250,000 for a system that would be worth billions. A system that represented years of my research, 18 months of my life. "Tomorrow," Victor continued, oblivious to my shock, "I'm presenting Precog to our biggest investors. We expect to secure an additional $50 million in funding. After that, we'll announce our exclusive new cybersecurity product." "You're firing me," I said flatly. "Transitioning you out," Diana corrected. "Effective immediately. With your bonus, of course." "Congratulations, your employment is terminated," Victor said with that predatory smirk I'd seen directed at competitors but never at me. "Our legal team confirms your algorithm belongs to Nextech under your contract." I should have argued, threatened legal action, made a scene. Instead, a strange calm settled over me. They expected resistance, had prepared for it. What they didn't know was that I prepared too. 6 months earlier, I discovered Victor had accessed my secure development server after hours. Nothing was taken, but the intrusion alerted me. From that moment, I began building safeguards into Precog, not just to protect it from external threats, but from internal ones too. I nodded quietly and handed over my laptop. "Of course, Mr. Carlton. Good luck with the investor demo tomorrow." Security escorted me to my lab where I packed personal items under watchful eyes. As I left the building, badgeless and carrying a cardboard box like a cliché of corporate dismissal, I smiled thinking about the special code I hidden in the presentation, set to activate exactly 10 minutes in. That night, I didn't panic or plot revenge. I ordered takeout, watched mindless television, and waited. My phone rang at 9:30 p.m. Megan, Victor's assistant. "He wants to see you," she said without preamble. "Now." "It's almost 10 p.m., I replied calmly. "He says it's urgent." "A car is already on its way to your apartment." 40 minutes later, I was escorted into Nextech's conference room. Victor sat alone at the head of the table, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled, tie loosened, hair standing up where he'd run his hands through it repeatedly. "Fix it," he demanded as soon as the door closed behind me. I settled into a chair, deliberately taking my time. "Fix what exactly?" "Don't play games, Sophia. You sabotaged the demo." I raised an eyebrow. "How could I?" "I've been gone for 24 hours. Security watched me clean out my desk. I didn't take any devices, access any systems." Victor slammed his hand on the table. The test run crashed. The entire system started identifying bizarre threats that don't exist, generating thousands of false positives. "It's completely unusable." "Sounds like a technical issue," I said. "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" His face flushed with anger. "This isn't funny. We have 12 major investors coming tomorrow. $50 million on the line." "Your investors," I reminded him. "Your system now, remember?" Victor took a deep breath, visibly forcing himself to calm down. When he spoke again, his voice had that smooth, persuasive quality that had convinced so many people, including me, to trust him. "Look, perhaps we were hasty yesterday. I'm prepared to discuss a more equitable arrangement. Co-creator credit. A larger compensation package, maybe even some equity." I leaned back in my chair. "What exactly happened during your test run?" Victor hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. The system seemed to turn on itself. It started identifying components of Nextech's own network as threats. Then it began generating reports, hundreds of them, documenting what it called internal ethical breaches. I couldn't help smiling. Precog is designed to identify threats, Victor. All threats. "What did you do?" "I didn't sabotage anything. Precog is working exactly as designed. It's an AI system that learns and evolves to protect networks from malicious activity. During development, I fed it case studies of cyber attacks, including cases where threats came from inside organizations." Victor paled. "You taught it to spy on us?" "I taught it to recognize threats wherever they originate. It's detecting something it perceives as malicious within Nextech. I wonder what that could be." Understanding dawned on his face. "The system thinks I'm the threat. Not you specifically, but perhaps certain behaviors. Unauthorized server access. Attempts to modify creator credentials. Plans to misrepresent ownership to investors." Victor's expression hardened. "You can't prove any of that." "I don't need to. Precog has been documenting everything for months. Every unauthorized access, every copied file, every modified document. It's all there in those reports it generated, with timestamps, access logs, and recorded keystrokes." The silence that followed was profound. Victor stared at me, calculation replacing anger in his eyes. "What do you want?" "Full recognition as Precog's creator and primary architect. 50% ownership of all related patents and intellectual property. A board seat to oversee its ethical implementation. And $10 million in compensation for the attempt to push me out." "That's extortion," he hissed. "No, it's negotiation. Extortion would be me sending those reports directly to the investors and the SEC." Victor glared at me for a long moment before his shoulders slumped in defeat. "The system, can you fix it for tomorrow's demo?" Precog doesn't need fixing. It needs proper authorization protocols. It's currently identifying unauthorized command attempts because its creator has been removed from the authentication chain. Simple fix, actually. I pulled a flash drive from my pocket and set it on the table between us. "This contains a proper authentication update that will resolve the immediate issues. Consider it a good faith gesture toward our new partnership. The contracts can be drawn up tomorrow." "And if I refuse?" "Then Precog remains broken, your investor demo fails, and those internal ethical breach reports find their way to some very interested parties. Your call." Victor reached for the flash drive. "You planned this all along." "No," I corrected him. "I hoped it wouldn't be necessary." But after finding you in my secure server 6 months ago, I built in protections for the system and for myself. How did you know I'd try to cut you out? I stood to leave. I did know for certain. But Precog is designed to recognize patterns and predict threats before they materialize. I guess some of that rubbed off on its creator. The next morning, I arrived at Nextech as co-founder and chief technology officer. Victor introduced me to the investors with a strange smile that never reached his eyes. The demo went flawlessly, Precog elegantly neutralizing every simulated attack thrown at it. One investor, impressed by the demonstration, asked Victor a question that made me hide a smile. Amazing system. What inspired its development? Victor hesitated just long enough before answering. It was actually Sophia's brainchild, her vision from the beginning. Nextech just provided the environment for that vision to flourish. As we fielded technical questions, my phone buzzed with a notification. Precog, now properly authenticated with my credentials restored, had sent me a private message. Threat neutralized. System integrity restored. Creator protections active. I smiled. The AI was learning faster than I'd anticipated. It had recognized an internal threat and helped eliminate it, just as designed. 3 months later, Precog's first commercial implementation prevented a major attack on a banking network, saving the institution an estimated $340 million and establishing our system as the new gold standard in cybersecurity. Victor and I maintain a professional working relationship. He focuses on business development where his skills are genuinely valuable, while I lead technical innovation. We're not friends and never will be, but we've reached an equilibrium that works. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled things differently, taken legal action instead of building in safeguards. But the truth is, Victor's attempted betrayal revealed something important. Technology is only as ethical as the people who control it. That lesson has become central to how we deploy Precog. Every implementation now includes robust ethical guardrails and transparency protocols. The system doesn't just protect networks, it protects itself and its users from misuse. Last week, as we celebrated Precog's successful public offering, valuing the company at $4.2 billion, a junior developer asked me the secret to building such revolutionary technology. It's not about the code, I told her. It's about understanding that the greatest security threats often come from where you least expect them. Build systems that can recognize those threats, adapt to them, and neutralize them without compromising their core integrity. Just like their creator had learned to do. The Victorian mansion on Maple Street had been my dream since childhood. I'd spend hours walking past it, imagining living in its towering turrets and elegant rooms. For 10 years, I saved every penny, waiting for the day it would go on sale. So when I saw my family's cars parked in its driveway, my heart nearly stopped. I'm Rebecca Chin, 35, and I just discovered my family had bought the home I dreamed of for years. They knew how much I wanted it. I talked about nothing else since the for sale sign went up 3 months ago. Oh, good you're here. My sister Amanda called from the front porch, waving with exaggerated enthusiasm. We wanted to surprise you. My parents stood beside her, my father jingling the keys while my mother beamed. The smug satisfaction on their faces told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't just about buying a beautiful house. This was about beating me again. Isn't it perfect? Amanda gushed, leading me inside. When we heard you were planning to bid on it, we just knew we had to have it instead. It's much too grand for just you anyway. I kept my expression neutral as I followed them through the rooms and memorized from the online listing. The original hardwood floors, the hand-carved banisters, the stained glass windows. All the details I'd fallen in love with were now theirs. We'll host all the family gatherings here now, my mother announced, since you never entertained properly in that tiny apartment of yours. What they didn't know was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of them. The moment I'd spotted my sister touring the house last month, I'd known what they were planning. It was exactly like them. They'd spent my whole life turning everything into a competition, then acting surprised when I was upset about losing. But this time, I hadn't lost. While they were focused on snatching my dream house, I'd been quietly closing on Riverside Manor, the even larger, more historic mansion next door. The renovations were already underway, transforming it into something that would make the Victorian look modest in comparison. It must have been expensive, I said casually, watching their faces. The market's so competitive right now. Oh, we managed, my father said, puffing up with pride. Some of us know how to handle money properly, unlike certain people who waste it all on education. The dig at my PhD didn't sting like it used to. My wasted education had led to a successful research career, earning me more than they realized. While they saw me as the family disappointment, unmarried, childless, focused on work, I'd been building a life that would have shocked them. Well, it's lovely, I said, heading for the door. I should get going. I have some moving arrangements to take care of myself. Moving? Amanda's eyebrows shot up. Don't tell me you're finally leaving that shabby apartment. I smiled. Something like that. I'll see you all soon. We'll be neighbors after all. I left them standing there confused, savoring the knowledge of what was coming. In 2 weeks, the moving trucks would arrive at Riverside Manor, and my family would realize that their perfect plan to outdo me had backfired spectacularly. But for now, I had contractors to meet and renovations to oversee. The wine cellar needed updating, and the ballroom's chandeliers were being restored to their original glory. My family had always underestimated me, treated me as competition rather than kin. They were about to learn that they'd been playing checkers while I was playing chess all along. 2 weeks later, I stood in my newly renovated foyer at Riverside Manor, watching through the floor-to-ceiling windows as moving trucks pulled up to my property. Right on schedule, my sister Amanda appeared on her front porch, coffee in hand, curiosity evident on her face. I smiled, knowing the show was about to begin. The movers started unloading premium furniture, antiques I collected over the years, and artwork that would make my mother's reproductions look cheap in comparison. Each piece had been carefully chosen to tell a story. The story of the success I'd built while my family was busy undermining me. Ms. Chen. One of the movers approached with a clipboard. Where would you like the grand piano? The music room or the ballroom? I could see Amanda's coffee cup freeze halfway to her mouth. The ballroom. My family's Victorian had many lovely features, but a ballroom wasn't one of them. The music room for now, I replied. The ballroom chandeliers are still being restored. Within an hour, my parents' car came screeching into their driveway. They'd obviously received Amanda's urgent call. I continued directing the movers, pretending not to notice as my family gathered on their porch, watching the parade of luxury items entering Riverside Manor. Rebecca. My mother's voice carried across the lawn. What's going on? I turned, affecting surprise. Oh, hello, just moving into my new home. Would you like a tour? They followed me inside, their faces growing increasingly pale as they took in the grand staircase, the original moldings, the hand-painted ceiling murals. Every room was larger, every feature more impressive than their Victorian. But, how? Amanda sputtered. You couldn't afford. Actually, I cut in smoothly, I could. All those years you thought I was struggling in my tiny apartment, I was investing, saving, building my portfolio. Did you really think I lived below my means because I had to? My father's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You let us believe. I let you believe what you wanted to believe, I said. Just like you let me believe you cared about my dreams when you outbid me on the Victorian. Fair's fair. I led them through the house, past the library with its 2-story bookshelves, through the conservatory with its rare plants into the state-of-the-art kitchen that made their gourmet setup look outdated. And this, I said, opening a set of double doors, is the ballroom where I'll be hosting the annual family Christmas party this year. I assume that won't be a problem. My mother clutched her pearls. But we always host Christmas. Well, things change, I smiled. Besides, my ballroom can actually fit the whole family comfortably. No more cramped quarters. As they stood there speechless, my phone buzzed. Excuse me, I said, checking the message. That'll be the interior designer. We're discussing plans for the rooftop garden. Rooftop garden? Amanda's voice had risen an octave. Oh yes, I replied casually. The view of your house from up there is quite lovely. You can see right into your backyard. They left shortly after, huddled together, whispering furiously. Through my windows, I watched them return to their Victorian. The house they'd bought to spite me, now overshadowed both literally and figuratively by my success. That evening, as I sat in my library enjoying a glass of wine, the texts started rolling in. First from Amanda. You planned this all along, didn't you? Then from my mother. We should discuss Christmas arrangements. Finally from my father. We need to talk about your investment strategies. I left them all unread. For years, they treated every family gathering like a competition, every success of mine as a challenge to be overcome. Now they'd have to live next door to the daily reminder that their plan had backfired spectacularly. The next morning, I hired a landscaping company to begin work on my gardens. The noise would start early, very early, and continue for weeks. Sometimes karma comes with a soundtrack of power tools and construction equipment. Welcome to the neighborhood, dear family. Let the games begin. 2 months after my move to Riverside Manor, I hosted my first neighborhood gathering. A garden party that showcased everything my property had to offer. My family watched from their considerably smaller yard as caterers set up elegant tables beneath imported pergolas, and string musicians took their places near the fountain. Isn't this a bit excessive? My mother asked when they finally made their way over, unable to resist the allure of the party they hadn't been invited to plan or control. Not at all, I replied, accepting a champagne flute from a passing server, just welcoming the neighbors properly. The guest list was carefully curated. Local business leaders, university colleagues, and notably several real estate developers who couldn't stop talking about how Riverside Manor was raising property values in the area. My family's Victorian, while charming, was now considered the smaller, less impressive house on the block. Amanda cornered me by the rose garden. Was this your plan all along? To make us look foolish? No, I said truthfully. My plan was to buy my dream house. You're the ones who made it a competition. I just decided to play by your rules for once. The party was a resounding success, establishing me as the neighborhood's new social center. My family's attempts to host competing events in their Victorian fell flat. Everyone preferred the grandeur of Riverside Manor's ballroom and gardens. One morning, about 6 months after I moved in, my father showed up at my door. We're thinking of selling, he admitted gruffly. The maintenance costs are higher than we expected. I nodded sympathetically. Victorian homes can be quite expensive to maintain. Though I hear property values have risen significantly since I renovated Riverside Manor. He shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, we thought perhaps you'd be interested in buying it. Keep it in the family. Why would I want a smaller house? I asked innocently. Besides, I quite enjoy watching you all live with the consequences of your choices. They didn't sell. Their pride wouldn't let them. Instead, they had to adapt to their new reality. Every family gathering at my house was a reminder of how their attempt to outdo me had backfired. Every improvement I made to Riverside Manor made their Victorian look a little shabbier in comparison. Christmas that year was particularly satisfying. The ballroom, decorated with professional skill, hosted our entire extended family comfortably. Cousins who had once echoed my parents' criticisms of my life choices now asked about investment advice and career strategies. As I watched my family navigate the party, looking small in the grand space they had never imagined I could own, I felt no triumph, only a quiet satisfaction. They had spent years trying to compete with me to prove their superiority. In the end, they had only competed with themselves. Your house is magnificent, my Aunt Sarah said, finding me by the Christmas tree. Though I can't help but wonder if it's a bit lonely, all this space for just one person. I smiled, thinking of the research center I was planning to establish in the East Wing. Not lonely at all. I've filled it with exactly what I want, just like I've filled my life with what I want, not what others think I should want. My family still lives next door in their Victorian. A daily reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising above. They wanted to teach me a lesson about knowing my place. Instead, they learned one about underestimating me. As for me, I host charity events in my ballroom, write research papers in my library, and enjoy my rooftop garden with its perfect view of their smaller house. Sometimes I catch them watching from their windows as I entertain guests or work on new improvements to the property. Let them watch. They spent years treating me like competition instead of family. Now they get to spend years living next door to the constant reminder that they lost a game they never should have started.
I stared at my brother's text message, each word burning into my retinas like acid. Stay away from Dad's 60th birthday party. You're an embarrassment to the family. Don't make me call security. Classic Michael, always the devoted son protecting the Martinez family image. The country club would be filled with Detroit's elite Tonatios, investors, and socialites all gathering to celebrate my father's milestone birthday. Heaven forbid they discover that Anthony Martinez's eldest daughter wasn't the failure they all thought she was. My phone buzzed again. This time from my stepmother, Victoria. Your brother is right. Tonight is important for your father's business relationships. We can't have any disruptions. Disruptions. That's what they called my choice to leave the family business 5 years ago. I'd refused to join Martinez Automotive as an executive, turning down the cushy corner office and six-figure salary that came with my last name. Instead, I chose to build something of my own. They never bothered to ask what that something was. I glanced at the wall of my home office, where a Forbes magazine cover hung framed, 30 Under 30, How Sarah Chin Revolutionized Electric Vehicle Technology. The article detailed how an unknown startup called Nova Technologies had developed breakthrough battery systems that were reshaping the automotive industry. What the article didn't mention was that Sarah Chin was actually Sofia Martinez, working under my mother's maiden name. The quiet daughter who'd embarrassed the family by pursuing engineering instead of business administration had just become the industry's most sought-after innovator. And tonight at my father's birthday party, everyone would finally know. My phone rang. Nova's CEO David Parker. Everything's set for tonight. Harrison Investment Group is ready to announce the partnership. Are you sure you want to do it this way? I smiled, thinking of my father's face when he realized the mysterious CEO he'd been trying to meet for months was his own daughter. Yes. It's time they all knew. Their faces will be priceless, David chuckled. By the way, James Harrison specifically requested you be there for the announcement. Your father's been chasing this investment for months. Of course he had. Martinez Automotive was struggling to compete in the electric vehicle market. They needed Nova's technology, my technology, to survive. I slipped into a simple black dress, nothing like the flashy designer pieces Victoria and my half-sister Gabriella would be wearing. My mother's old pendant, a simple silver crescent moon, hung around my neck. She'd given it to me before she died, back when I was still the daughter my father was proud of. Follow your heart, Sophia, she'd said. Even if it leads you away from where everyone thinks you should go. The country club loomed ahead as my car pulled up to the valet station. Through the windows, I could see the party in full swing, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over Detroit's business royalty. A banner proclaimed, "Happy 60th birthday, Anthony," in elegant gold script. At the entrance, Michael's wife Emma was checking guests against the list. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Sophia, you can't," Michael specifically said. "Good evening, Mrs. Martinez." I cut her off smoothly. "I believe you'll find I'm expected." James Harrison's office called ahead. She frantically checked her tablet. "Yes, here it is. Mr. Harrison specifically requested." "But how did you?" I walked past her, stuttering, into the world I'd left behind. The same faces, the same forced laughs, the same game of who knows who that had suffocated me for years. Victoria held court near the bar, her diamonds catching the light as she gestured dramatically. Gabriella hung on the arm of some junior executive, giggling at everything he said. Michael spotted me first. His face darkened as he started toward me, purpose in every step. "What part of stay away didn't you understand?" "Hello to you too, brother," I said calmly. "Lovely party." "Security will be here in 2 minutes," he hissed. "Don't make a scene." "Actually, I checked my watch. I believe Mr. Harrison will be here in 1 minute. And he's specifically asked for me to be present." Michael's face twisted in confusion. "Harrison? What could James Harrison possibly want with you?" Right on cue, the room's energy shifted. James Harrison had arrived. James Harrison's entrance silenced the room. At 65, he commanded attention not through volume or stature, but through sheer presence. His investment firm controlled billions, and tonight, everyone knew he was announcing a major partnership with someone in the room. My father rushed forward, hand extended. "James, so glad you could make it." "Anthony," Harrison smiled, shaking his hand. "Quite a turnout. Though I'm really here to finally meet your..." His eyes scanned the room, landing on me. "Ah, there she is." The silence turned heavy as Harrison walked straight past my father, approaching me with his hand extended. "Miss Chin, or should I say Ms. Martinez? It's wonderful to finally meet you in person." You could have heard a champagne bubble pop in the silence that followed. My father's face went from confused to shocked to ashen in the span of seconds. Michael's mouth hung open, his security threat forgotten. I don't understand," my father managed. "You know Sophia?" Harrison's eyes twinkled. Know her? Anthony, your daughter is the most brilliant innovator in the industry. Though, he glanced around the stunned room, I'm gathering from everyone's reactions that they didn't know Sarah Chin and Sofia Martinez were the same person. Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound seemed to break the spell of silence. Impossible, Michael stepped forward. Sophia's been doing nothing since she left the company. She's been building Nova Technologies. I finished for him. That nothing you mentioned? It's now worth $4.2 billion. My father gripped a nearby chair for support. Nova? The battery technology everyone's been. That's right, Dad. I smiled, feeling years of dismissal and disappointment finally lifting from my shoulders. That mysterious CEO you've been trying to meet? The one whose technology could save Martinez Automotive? You raced her. Harrison cleared his throat. Speaking of which, shall we make the announcement now? Wait, my father held up a hand. What announcement? Harrison Investment Group's partnership with Nova Technologies. I said clearly, watching their faces. We're acquiring a controlling interest in Martinez Automotive. The room erupted in whispers. Michael's face turned purple. You can't do this. Actually, Harrison interjected, we can and we are. Nova's battery technology is revolutionary. Every major manufacturer wants it. But Ms. Martinez here insisted on offering her family's company first right of refusal. Victoria pushed forward. Anthony, you can't let her take control. She'll destroy everything we've built. Everything you built? I laughed softly. You mean the company that's losing market share every quarter? The one that's 3/4 away from bankruptcy because you refuse to invest in electric vehicle technology? That company. My father's business mask cracked completely. Sophia, please. We can talk about this. Now you want to talk? I moved closer, lowering my voice. 5 years ago, when I tried to tell you about electric being the future, you told me to stop playing engineer and learn real business. When I brought you my initial designs, Michael called them cute drawings. When I left to start my own company, Victoria said I was abandoning my responsibilities. Harrison watched with interest as years of family dynamics unfolded before him. The time for talking was then, I continued. Now is the time for saving what's left of Martinez Automotive. You need my technology and I'm offering it. The only question is whether you're willing to accept that your biggest embarrassment is now your only hope. Gabriella, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. But, all those times we invited you to family events and you said you were too busy. I was. Building a company takes time. But you never asked what I was building, did you? Too busy assuming I was failing to consider I might be succeeding. Harrison pulled out a folder. The papers are ready, Anthony. Nova Technologies will acquire a 60% stake in Martinez Automotive. Sophia will take over as CEO, implementing her electric vehicle strategy across all product lines. And if I refuse? My father's voice was barely a whisper. Then we'll take our technology to your competitors, I said simply. I'm sure they'll be thrilled to have it. Michael grabbed our father's arm. Dad, you can't seriously consider. Be quiet, Michael, our father snapped, surprising everyone. He really looked at me for the first time in years. The battery technology, it's really yours. I nodded, pulling out my phone and pulling up Nova's patents. Every design, every innovation. While you were all pitying my failure, I was revolutionizing the industry. He studied the designs and I saw the moment he understood, not just the technology but everything he'd missed. His eyes filled with tears. Sophia. Save it, I said but gently. We can talk about the past later. Right now we need to save your company. Are you ready to listen to your embarrassment of a daughter? Harrison held out a pen. The room held its breath. With hands that shook slightly, my father took it. As he signed the papers, I heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath, saw Michael's fists clench at his sides. But none of that mattered anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison announced to the room, please join me in congratulating the new CEO of Martinez Nova Technologies, Miss Sofia Martinez. The applause was scattered, uncertain. My father stood beside me looking shell-shocked. Michael stormed out, pulling Emma with him. Victoria's perfect makeup couldn't hide her fury. But there, hanging around my neck, my mother's pendant seemed to glow a little brighter. I'd followed my heart just like she'd said. It had led me right back here, not as the dutiful daughter they'd wanted, but as the powerful woman I'd become. Later that night, as the party wound down, my father found me on the terrace. "That night you left," he said quietly, "you tried to show me your designs. I wouldn't even look at them." "No, you wouldn't. I was wrong. About everything." He turned to face me. "Can you ever forgive me?" I touched my mother's pendant, thinking of choices and consequences, pride and redemption. "That depends, Dad. Are you ready to learn from your daughter?" He nodded, humbled at last. "Teach me. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't proving others wrong, it's proving yourself right. And sometimes, just sometimes, it comes with the chance to rebuild what was broken but on your own terms." The next morning, as I walked into Martinez Automotive, now Martinez Nova Technologies SEO, I passed the company's motto mounted on the wall: "Driving Tomorrow's Future." By next week, it would be changed to something more fitting: "Innovation Runs in the Family." Michael's office was already empty. Victoria's designer decorations were gone. But on my new desk sat a small package. Inside was my mother's old engineering textbook, bookmarked to a page where she'd written in the margin, "For Sophia, who will change the world her own way." And I had. Just not the way anyone had expected.
Life has a way of revealing people's true colors when money enters the picture. I'm Emma, and this is the story of how my stepsister Sarah's greed destroyed our family, or so she thought. Growing up, I always tried to welcome Sarah and her mother Linda into our lives after my father remarried. When they first moved in, I was 12 and Sarah was 14. I still miss my own mother terribly. She had passed away from cancer 2 years earlier. But I wanted to make things work. My father seemed happy with Linda, and I wanted that happiness to last. Sarah, however, never reciprocated my efforts at sisterhood. While she maintained a perfect facade in front of our parents, she made it clear in private that she saw me as competition. "This is my house now," she'd whisper when no one else was around. "And your dad, he's going to love me more than you." I tried telling my father about Sarah's behavior, but Linda always defended her daughter. "Girls will be girls," she'd say with a dismissive wave. "Sarah's just adjusting. Give her time." My father, not wanting to rock the boat in his new marriage, would simply encourage me to try harder with my stepsister. As years passed, I focused on my studies and building my own life. I graduated from business school and started working at a financial consulting firm, making my father proud. Sarah, meanwhile, bounced between jobs and relationships, always finding ways to extract money from our parents for her latest venture or crisis. My father's health began declining 3 years ago. What started as occasional fatigue progressed into something more serious. The doctors diagnosed him with a rare form of leukemia, and suddenly, our world turned upside down. I immediately shifted to working remotely so I could help care for him. During those long days at the hospital, I noticed Sarah's sudden increased interest in our father's affairs. She started spending more time in his hospital room, always shooing me away with claims of private conversations. Linda supported this, saying Sarah was finally bonding with her stepfather. What I didn't know then was that Sarah was carefully orchestrating my downfall. One evening, after a particularly long day at the hospital, I returned home to find my laptop missing from my room. I searched everywhere, but it had vanished. When I mentioned this to Sarah, she just shrugged, saying she hadn't seen it. 2 days later, my father called me into his hospital room. His face was ashen, and Linda stood by his bed, arms crossed and glaring at me. Sarah sat beside him, holding his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Emma," my father said, his voice weak but filled with disappointment, "Sarah showed me the evidence." "How could you?" "Evidence? What evidence?" I asked, genuinely confused. Sarah pulled out my missing laptop, opened it, and turned it toward me. On the screen were bank statements showing large transfers from my father's accounts to an offshore account in my name. My heart stopped. These were clearly fabricated, but they looked convincingly real. "I found this when I borrowed her laptop to check my email," Sarah said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. "I couldn't believe my sister would do this to you, Dad. I had to tell you." "That's not possible," I protested, my voice rising with panic. "Those statements are fake. Sarah stole my laptop. She must have fabricated this." Linda stepped forward, her face twisted with anger. How dare you accuse my daughter when she's exposed your theft? We raised you better than this. Dad, please, I begged, turning to my father. You know me. I would never steal from you. Sarah's lying. But my father's face had hardened. Years of Sarah's subtle manipulation had done their work, and now, in his weakened state, he was all too ready to believe the worst of me. I already called my lawyer, he said quietly. I'm changing my will. I can't trust you with my estate, Emma. Not after this. The room spun around me. Everything I'd worked for, every sacrifice I'd made, was crumbling because of Sarah's elaborate lie. I tried to explain, to defend myself, but Linda and Sarah had created such a convincing narrative that my protests only seemed to confirm my guilt in their eyes. Get out, Linda snapped, pointing to the door. You're no longer welcome here, you ungrateful thief. I looked at my father one last time, hoping to see some doubt, some willingness to hear my side. But he turned his face away, and in that moment, I knew I'd lost everything. As I walked out of the hospital room, Sarah followed me into the hallway. Once we were alone, our tears vanished, replaced by a triumphant smirk. You should see your face, she whispered. Did you really think Dad would choose you over me? I've been planning this for months. Every detail, every document. Perfect, wasn't it? And now, everything that should have been yours will be mine. I stood there, my whole body shaking with anger and disbelief. Why? I managed to ask. I never did anything to hurt you. Sarah's eyes hardened. Because you existed. Because for years I had to watch you play the perfect daughter while I was always second best. Well, not anymore. I win, little sister. I win. I left the hospital that day with nothing but my purse and my car keys. Linda had already texted me, warning that if I returned to the house, she'd call the police. I checked into a hotel, my mind racing as I tried to process how quickly my life had fallen apart. That night, my father's lawyer called. In a cold, professional voice, he informed me that my father had signed a new will, leaving his entire estate, including the family home, his business shares, and all his investments, totaling roughly $4.8 million, to Sarah. I was completely disinherited. I spent hours staring at the hotel ceiling, replaying every moment, every interaction with Sarah over the years. All her little comments, her subtle manipulations had been leading to this. She'd played the long game, and I'd never seen it coming. But as I lay there, something my father had once told me came floating back. In business and in life, Emma, he'd said, always keep proof of your integrity. Sometimes the truth takes time to surface, but it always does. A small smile crossed my face as I remembered something else. Something Sarah didn't know about. My father's old safety deposit box at the bank. He'd given me access to it years ago, and inside was evidence that would turn Sarah's perfect plan on its head. But I had to be patient. Let Sarah think she'd won. Let her believe her victory was complete. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is the one you don't see coming until it's too late. Tomorrow, I would start gathering my resources and planning my next move. Sarah thought she'd taken everything from me, but she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I was my father's daughter, and he taught me well. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. 3 months passed after my father's death. I spent that time living in a small apartment, carefully avoiding any contact with Sarah or Linda, while they basked in their apparent victory. Through mutual friends, I heard about their extravagant spending. Sarah had already started renovating the family home, replacing everything that held any memory of me or my mother. But today was the day everything would change. I sat in the bank manager's office, watching through the glass partition as Sarah and Linda strutted in, dressed in expensive new clothes bought with my father's money. They were here to access his safety deposit box, the one they'd only recently discovered existed after finding the key in his study. What they didn't know was that I'd already been here an hour earlier, speaking with Mr. Thompson, the bank manager who'd known my father for 20 years. Mrs. Walker, Miss Thompson, Mr. Thompson greeted them formally. Please follow me to the vault. I stayed out of sight as they disappeared down the hallway. The security camera feed on Mr. Thompson's desk showed them entering the vault area. I watched as he helped them locate the correct box and left them in the private viewing room. Standard procedure for safety deposit box access. Sarah's hands were practically shaking with excitement as she inserted the key. I could almost hear her thoughts. More hidden assets. Extra money? But when she opened the box, her triumphant smile froze. Inside was a single USB drive and a letter in my father's handwriting. The envelope read, "To be opened only in the presence of Emma Collins." Linda snatched the letter, her face reddening. "What is this? Where's the rest?" Sarah was already reaching to tear open the envelope when Mr. Thompson's voice cut through their confusion. "I must ask you to stop immediately. That letter clearly states it requires Miss Collins's presence." "This is ridiculous," Sarah snapped. "I'm the sole heir. Everything of our fathers belongs to me now." That was my cue. I stepped into the viewing room, enjoying the way both their faces paled at the sight of me. "Hello, Sarah." "Linda. Surprised to see me?" Linda recovered first, her shock turning to fury. "How dare you come here? This is a private meeting." "Actually," Mr. Thompson interjected, "Miss Collins has every right to be here. She's still a registered holder of this safety deposit box." I walked over and picked up the envelope. "Shall we see what Dad wanted to share with all of us?" Sarah tried to grab the letter from my hands, but Mr. Thompson stepped between us. "Miss Thompson, please remember you're on camera. Any aggressive action will be reported to the authorities." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true. I know about Sarah's plan to frame you for theft. I discovered her scheme weeks ago when I overheard her talking on the phone about forged bank statements. At first, I couldn't believe it. I wanted to confront her immediately, but then I realized this was my chance to know the truth about both my daughters. I decided to play along to see how far Sarah would go. The USB drive in this box contains security camera footage from my home office showing Sarah breaking in late at night, accessing my computer, and creating the fraudulent documents. It also has recordings of her phone conversations with the hacker she hired to create the fake bank statements. Emma, my brave girl, I'm so sorry for doubting you, even briefly. By the time you read this, I'll have already signed a new will, the real one, hidden with my lawyer, Mr. Davidson. The will Sarah thinks she benefits from is a fake, part of my own plan to expose her true nature. My entire estate, all $4.8 million, belongs to you, as it always should have. The will Sarah has is worthless. Love, Dad." The color drained from Sarah's face as I read. Linda gripped the table for support, her knuckles white. I looked up from the letter, meeting Sarah's terrified eyes. "You really should have been more careful about where you made your phone calls, Sarah. Did you really think Dad's office wasn't monitored?" "You're lying," Linda sputtered. "This is a trick." I pulled out my phone and played a video of security footage showing Sarah in our father's office late at night, hunched over his computer. Her voice came through clearly. "Yes, I need the bank statements to look perfect. Emma has to lose everything." Sarah lunged for my phone, but Mr. Thompson was faster, stepping between us again. "I've already sent copies of everything to the police," I said calmly. "They're very interested in wire fraud and inheritance fraud cases, you know." "You can't prove anything," Sarah hissed, but her voice shook with uncertainty. "Actually," Mr. Thompson added, "the bank has already received notification from Mr. Davidson's office about the validity of the real will. We've frozen all accounts pending investigation." Linda grabbed Sarah's arm. "We need to leave. Now." "Oh, you'll be leaving all right," I said, "but not for long. The police want to speak with both of you. They're waiting in the bank lobby." As if on cue, 2 police officers appeared at the viewing room door. The next few minutes were a blur of activity, Sarah and Linda being read their rights, their protests echoing through the bank's marble halls. I stayed behind in the viewing room, holding my father's letter. A tear rolled down my cheek as I read his words again. He had known. He had protected me, even at the end. Mr. Thompson touched my shoulder gently. "Your father was a wise man, Miss Collins. He knew exactly how to expose the truth." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Yes, he did. And now it's time to set everything right." The weeks following Sarah and Linda's arrest were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and revelations. As the investigation deepened, more of Sarah's deceptions came to light. She hadn't just forged bank statements, she'd been systematically stealing from our father's accounts for months, using the money to set up her own secret nest egg. I sat in a courtroom, watching as Sarah's carefully crafted world crumbled around her. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, recorded phone calls, bank records showing her theft, and even testimony from the hacker she'd hired, who'd struck a plea deal to testify against her. Linda didn't fare much better. The investigation revealed she'd been fully aware of Sarah's plan, even helping to coordinate some of the theft. Her perfectly maintained facade of the caring stepmother shattered as prosecutors exposed her role in the scheme. During the trial, Sarah finally broke down on the stand. "It wasn't fair," she screamed, mascara running down her face. "She always had everything. Dad's love, his trust, his pride. Everything I wanted. I deserve that money." The judge was unmoved. "Miss Thompson, your actions show a calculated effort to destroy your stepsister's life for personal gain. This court sentences you to 8 years in prison for fraud, theft, and conspiracy." Linda received 5 years for her role as an accomplice. As they were led away in handcuffs, Sarah turned to me one last time. "I hate you," she spat. "I've always hated you." I simply watched them go, feeling not triumph but a deep sadness for the family we could have been. With the criminal case concluded, I moved back into my childhood home. The first few days were difficult. Memories of my father were everywhere, along with signs of Sarah and Linda's brief occupation. They'd started redecorating, trying to erase every trace of the past, but hadn't gotten far before their arrest. One evening, as I sorted through papers in my father's study, I found an old photo album. Inside were pictures from my childhood, my mother, my father, and me in happier times. There was also a sealed envelope tucked between the pages, addressed to me in my father's handwriting. With trembling hands, I opened it. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then everything has played out as I feared it might. I want you to know that my apparent betrayal in the hospital was the hardest thing I've ever done. Pretending to believe Sarah's lies, watching you walk away thinking I'd abandoned you, it tore me apart. But I knew I had to let her think she'd won. It was the only way to expose the full extent of her deception. The hardest part was knowing I wouldn't live to see justice done. I need you to know that you were always my greatest joy. You have your mother's strength and kindness, and I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become. The way you handled this crisis, with dignity and patience, waiting for the truth to emerge rather than seeking immediate revenge, proves you're exactly the person I raised you to be. The money, the house, the business, yes, they're all yours now. But they're not what matters most. What matters is that you stood strong in the face of betrayal, held onto your integrity, and let the truth speak for itself. I know the road ahead won't be easy. Betrayal leaves deep scars, and healing takes time. But remember this: true family isn't always about blood. It's about love, trust, and choosing to stand by each other through good times and bad. I hope you'll find it in your heart to build a new family, one based on love and trust rather than obligation. You deserve that happiness, Emma. Don't let Sarah's actions poison your capacity to trust and love others. Take care of yourself, my brave girl. Know that your mother and I are watching over you, proud of the woman you've become. All I love, Dad. Tears flowed freely as I read his words. Even at the end, facing death and betrayal, my father had thought of my future happiness. He'd known that money wasn't what I really needed. I needed to know that he believed in me, trusted me, loved me. In the months that followed, I worked to rebuild my life. The family business thrived under my leadership, and I established a scholarship foundation in my father's name, helping students who'd lost parents to cancer. It felt right to create something positive from all the pain we'd endured. I also sought therapy to process the trauma of Sarah's betrayal. Slowly, I learned to trust again, to open my heart to new friendships and relationships. My father was right. Family isn't just about blood. I built a new family of chosen people who supported and loved me for who I was. Sarah and Linda made several attempts to contact me from prison, sending letters filled with apologies and pleas for forgiveness. I didn't respond. Some betrayals run too deep for simple forgiveness, and some relationships are better left in the past. Instead, I focused on honoring my father's legacy through my actions. The money he left me became a tool for positive change rather than a source of conflict. In the end, that felt like the greatest victory, turning what Sarah had wanted to steal into something that helped others. Today, 5 years later, I still live in our family home, surrounded by memories of the parents who loved me and the lessons they taught me. The pain of betrayal has faded, replaced by gratitude for the wisdom my father showed in his final days. Sarah and Linda's greed cost them everything: their freedom, their reputation, their future. But their betrayal taught me something valuable. True wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the integrity with which we live our lives. As I sit in my father's old study, watching the sunset through his favorite window, I feel at peace. His last gift to me wasn't the money or the house. It was the lesson that patience, integrity, and truth will always prevail over deception and greed. Sometimes I think about Sarah, wondering if prison has changed her, but then I remember my father's words about choosing my own family, and I know I've chosen the right path. My life is full of love, purpose, and genuine relationships, things that Sarah, with all her schemes and manipulation, never understood were worth more than any inheritance.